Professor Nam-Yong Lee's editorial, long, Korea is not a developed country but has entered the middle-income trap. Viewing the Korean economy as a simple recession does not accurately describe reality. A recession is a downward phase of the business cycle and can be recovered through monetary and fiscal policy. However, the current Korean economy is not a matter of recovery speed, but a halt in the transition to a higher stage of growth. I define this condition as the middle income trap. In this state, policy prescriptions become less effective the more they are repeated, because the cause is not insufficient demand, but structural stagnation. The reason our country is falling into the middle income trap is not attributable only to the Lee Jae-myung administration. The stakeholders in the middle income trap are the government, corporations, workers, households, financial institutions, and future generations. The government prioritizes distributive stability and political stability. Corporations determine investment location based on cost and regulation. Workers pursue wage stability and job security. Households prefer rising asset prices. Financial institutions expand collateral-based lending. Future generations need productivity-based employment. When these interests collide, the economy shifts towards stagnation. In global standards, developed countries resolve conflicts through productivity growth. Middle-income countries attempt to resolve conflicts through redistribution adjustments. Distribution-centered solutions are effective for short-term stability, but disadvantageous for long-term growth. Korea's current policy conflicts occur precisely at this point. This is not policy failure but structural mismatch. Therefore, without correcting the diagnosis, prescriptions will continue to fail. An inversion between growth rate and income level is occurring. Korea's real economic growth averaged about 7 to 8% in the 1990s. It fell to about 4 to 5% in the 2000s and to about 2 to 3% in the 2010s. The recent 5-year average is around 2%. Meanwhile, per capita GDP has exceeded $30,000. This is a high-income, low-growth structure. High income with low growth is natural for developed economies, but only under one condition: productivity must be world-class. Korea's productivity is still below the developed country average. Thus, Korea did not become advanced because growth slowed. Rather, the growth mechanism has stopped. This is the core characteristic of the middle-income trap. Statistically, productivity growth is slowing while cost growth is rising. Labor cost growth exceeds productivity growth. This leads to declining corporate profitability. Declining profitability reduces investment, and reduced investment lowers growth again. This vicious cycle forms the basic structure of today's Korean economy. The gap between working hours and productivity is widening. Korea's annual working hours are about 1,900, Germany's are about 1,350, and France's about 1,500. Koreans work longer hours, yet hourly labor productivity is about 65% of the United States and about 70% of Germany. This phenomenon is not due to lack of effort, but to a systemic problem. A labor input-centered economy is a characteristic of middle-income countries. Developed economies are technology and capital-centered. Korea still remains in a labor-centered production structure. Long working hours hinder productivity growth because time for learning and innovation is insufficient. From an FEA perspective, human resource management, production management, and innovation management functions are separated. Firms manage labor as a cost, while the government manages employment as a protected object. In such a structure, workforce reallocation is impossible, resulting in productivity stagnation. Therefore, the key prescription is not merely reducing working hours but expanding labor mobility. There is stagnation in industrial structure and service productivity. Korea's manufacturing share is about 27 to 30% of GDP, the highest in the OECD. This was a strength in the industrialization stage, but becomes a constraint at the advanced stage. In developed countries, service productivity surpasses manufacturing productivity. Korea's service productivity is about 55% of the United States. Manufacturing competitiveness remains strong, but the problem lies in the service sector. A regulation protection structure limits competition. High entry barriers make it difficult for innovative firms to emerge, resulting in a shortage of high value-added jobs. This explains why young people move toward public sector examinations. In world-based practice, promoting service sector competition is the core policy. Regulation is based on ex-post accountability rather than ex-ante permission. Korea relies mainly on prior approval. In this structure, innovation proceeds slowly. Therefore, service liberalization is a key condition for escaping the middle-income trap. Corporate overseas relocation and investment shifts are expanding rapidly. Over the past 20 years, outward foreign direct investment increased from about $10 billion to $60 to $80 billion annually. Meanwhile, domestic facility investment growth has stagnated. Firms choose overseas expansion over domestic expansion. This is not patriotism, but productivity relative to cost. Firms move to where profitability is higher. Rising labor, regulatory, and administrative costs shift investment location. Investment relocation reduces employment, which reduces domestic demand and leads again to investment decline. A structural contraction equilibrium forms. From a relational perspective, the government strengthens job protection, but ultimately reduces job opportunities. Firms choose automation and outsourcing through artificial intelligence. Workers gain stability but lose opportunity. If this structure continues, the economy stops. Therefore, the investment environment must be redesigned around productivity. Asset structure also contributes to stagnation. Real estate accounts for about 70 to 75% of household assets, compared to about 50 to 60% in major advanced countries. Capital concentrates on assets rather than innovation. Finance does not flow into production, the economy does not grow, and only asset prices fluctuate. In this structure, interest rate policy is weak. Lower rates raise property prices rather than investment. Fiscal expansion increases transfer payments rather than production. The policy does not fail, it is applied at the wrong stage. In global standards, finance diversifies risk and supports innovation. In Korea, finance expands collateral. Collateral-centered finance is characteristic of middle-income countries. Transition to innovation-centered finance is necessary for growth. Therefore, capital market reform is essential. There is also a fiscal structure problem. Tax burden and social insurance contributions are rising while growth is falling. Redistribution is expanding without productivity growth. Developed countries expand welfare after productivity growth. Korea follows the reverse order. Redistribution is necessary but reduces vitality without productivity. Fiscal policy is a stabilizer, not a growth engine. The growth engine is innovation and investment. A fiscal-centered economy leads to long-term stagnation. Therefore, the role of fiscal policy must be redefined toward productivity investment rather than income transfer. Education, research and development, and industrial competition policy are key. Protection policies should shrink and competition policies should expand. This is the condition for transition to a developed country. Korea is not a poor country but a country where growth has stopped. The cost structure is that of an advanced economy, while the productivity structure is that of a middle-income economy. This collision causes all policy failures. Thus, the answer is not working harder but working differently. The solution is clear. Labor mobility expansion, service competition promotion, education reform, regulatory transformation, and capital market innovation must occur simultaneously. Policy must shift from protection-centered to competition-centered. Developed countries are not created by protection but by competition. The Republic of Korea stands at the threshold of advanced country status. The current confusion is not failure but misdirection. The choice between remaining in the middle-income stage and moving to a true advanced economy has begun. This choice will determine the income of future generations. I hope the Lee Jae-myung administration makes the correct policy decision. Thank you for watching Professor Nam-Yong Lee's editorial.